in the chat. And then, of course, we also in the second session posted that YouTube link for you, where you can then go later on to re-watch our recordings, particularly if there's something that you just want to kind of check maybe again. Then please go and make use of those resources. Okay, so let me now just find what we have to share. There we go. Okay, so before our break then, we were going and we were working with our accounting equation, and we were looking at a batch of basic transactions, and we were saying how would these transactions impact the accounting equation. So we have to show we'll have those two entries, and then we also said, right now, how will they impact the general ledger? With other words, do we have one debit and do we have one credit? So those were the kinds of examples that we were working with before the break. So here I just want to show you is some last year's question. So this was semester test 1 last year, question number 3 for 15 marks. And now remember again, we're going to follow all our little tips. So tip number 1, we see it's a 15-mark question, meaning you've got 18 minutes to complete the question in. So we're not going to overrun on time. We're going to stick to those 18 minutes. Then step number 2 is we're going to read that all important required, and we're going to make sure that we completely understand what they want us to do with the information. And then in this particular question, it was one where they wanted the student to show both the impact on the general ledger as well as the accounting equation. Now, unfortunately, we're a little bit short on time, so I'm not going to be able to work through this whole question with you now. What I will do is I'm just going to slowly go through the slides. So once you've tried this question at home, you can circle back to the recording and just come and quickly maybe mark your answer off the slides. So that's what I'm going to do. The next thing, another tip that I have to share with you is once you've seen what is being required, you have to check the inventory system being used by the question. So you can see clearly here in question number 3, we told you to use the perpetual inventory system. So that's a very important piece of the puzzle that you must check in the question. And another student asked me earlier, may you highlight on your test paper? So certainly on your test paper, you can do exactly what I've done on my slide and highlight that important fact that it's perpetual inventory, and then you won't forget about it. And then, of course, the other key thing you need to look out for is, are they using a markup or a gross margin to when they sell their inventory? And that I will discuss with you now in the next session when we talk about learning unit number 3. So that's another important tip for the test. So here is then the full answer for question 3. So later on when you watch the recording, come back then to this part of the recording. I'm trying to see if I can give you a time stamp, but because, yeah, I'm not exactly sure, but it's at the beginning of recording number 3, then where you can then quickly come and mark your answer once you've had an opportunity to complete that. And here you can see at the end, I'm just double checking quickly that my total assets are in fact equal to my owner's equity and my liabilities. So the 4 exam tips then that we've learned so far. So remember, this is now what you're going to do on the actual day of the test. You're going to stay on time. You're going to read and understand your required. You're going to show us workings if they are in that particular question, and then make sure you check which inventory method and is it a markup or gross margin. Okay, so that brings us to the end of learning unit number 2. Now we are going to move over to learning unit number 3. So while I just move over my slides, you can maybe ask some more questions if you have some, and then we're going to start with learning unit number 3.
Hi, Ina. I have a question from a student. What's the difference between perpetual and periodic?
Dear student, we don't have time to cover that question. Remember, I have been putting up for you the slide. Please go to your textbook page number 70. That gives you a detailed explanation of the two inventory systems. So please, if I can refer you back to that page in your textbook, and then in learning unit number 6, your lecturer will cover that in a lot more detail. Okay, so the last learning unit that we need to just address to get you ready for our semester test then is our all-important learning unit number 3. So again, remember our semester test is going to cover learning units 1, 2, and 3. It is a 1-hour test for 50 marks. This is the learning unit outcomes for learning unit number 3. So as I said, with learning units 1 and 2, make sure you just go through these and say to yourself, could I answer a question based on these 8 outcomes? If we were to look at the types of questions that can come out of this learning unit, again, the first point is theory. So we've seen and spoken about it now quite a bit in learning units 1, 2, and 3. In each of these learning units, there's quite a bit of theory. So please don't underestimate the theory when you prepare for our semester test. We've seen so far, working through the past paper, there was about 10 marks of theory from learning unit 1. There was another 10 odd marks from learning unit 2. And you'll see now when we look at the past paper, there was also a theory question on learning unit number 3. So please don't underestimate a theory when you prepare for your semester test. Of course, without the VAT theory, you are also not going to know what is standard rated supply, what is a zero rated supply, what is an exempt supply. So you also need your theory to be able to answer those application questions. In Learning Unit 3, there's also a big section on all of the source documents. What do the respective source document looks like? When are they being used? What do we write on them? So please make sure that you also go through the section. It starts with section 3.5 in the textbook that deals with source documents, specifically your tax invoice, what needs to be included on a tax invoice to make it a valid tax invoice. So please make sure you are also going through all of those aspects as part of your preparation. Then we have to be able to make our VAT calculations. We have to be able to do our markup calculations and our gross margin calculations. And most of my time now, our last 40 minutes that we have, I'm going to focus on the VAT and markup calculations. The more theory aspects of this learning unit, you can obviously do that in your own time. So back to last year's semester test. Here you can see there was, as I said, also a theory question on learning unit number 3. And it was a question where you were given certain supplies, VAT supplies, and you had to then categorize them. Are they standard rated, zero rated, exempt, and the like? And there's 2 similar questions to this in your textbook. So you can also go and have a look at those 2 textbook questions when you prepare yourself for the semester test. Okay, so remember, we're still all about our tips and tricks for the semester test. So we say you have to make sure you're staying on time. So by now in your test, you're on to question number 5. So hopefully you've now been using your time properly, because otherwise when you get here to question number 5, you may end up starting to rush through questions, or you might end up having to leave out questions if you haven't been managing your time consistently as you've gone through the paper. So remember, 1.2 minutes is all that you can use per mark. We're reading all the required, so we're making sure we're understanding exactly what the examiner wants from us, because remember, If you do too much, you're possibly going to run out of time. If you do too little, then of course that's going to impact your marks directly. As we've said a few times now, the recordings are being done. We are recording, and you're going to find it later today on YouTube. Obviously, you'll just need to give us an hour or two to now get the content onto YouTube, but hopefully later today, it will all be there. Okay, so we're going to talk VAT calculations now. And these VAT calculations is so key because it also impacts you in future learning units. So remember, right at the beginning this morning, I had that little building blocks a slide of mine where I showed you how test 1 and test 2 and the exam all fit together. And this is now a perfect example of the building blocks, because if you don't grasp the VAT calculations today, or if you don't grasp them for test 1, then they're also going to come back and impact your ability to do test 2, because in learning units 4 and 5 and 6, when we start writing up the different journals, once again, we have to be able to make our VAT calculations. So let's go through very basic VAT calculations. So if the question gives you the amount excluding VAT, and in the question you are required to work out the amount including VAT, or even the VAT amount, how are you going to go about to do it? So I've got the amount excluding VAT. Sorry, no, it's not. Let me just, okay. If I now want to work out how much VAT is on this amount, I'm going to multiply it with 15%. Oops. And that is going to give me the VAT amount. So if we put some numbers to it, if the amount excluding VAT is 5,000 rands, I multiply it with 15%, it gives me a VAT amount of 750 rands. So this is one of your most basic entries that you could be asked to do, where you just take the amount excluding VAT, multiply it with the 15%, and it gives you VAT. In our upcoming semester test, we're still using the 15% VAT rate. Typically in the question, we also normally tell you the VAT rate, but if the question doesn't specify the rate, you will use our 15%. Now, so is this now? Sorry. Oh yes. So this is just the slide then that just reminds you to use the 15%. We're still using the 15% VAT rate. So now the next thing you need to be able to do is, if I give you the amount excluding VAT, and I'm asking you to calculate the amount including VAT. So we have the amount excluding VAT. We're going to multiply now with 1.15, and that's going to give you the amount including VAT. So let's put some numbers to it then. So the amount excluding VAT, again, if we use the 5,000 rands, if I multiply it with 1.15, then it gives me the amount including VAT of 5,750 rands. Now, I just want to stress, I'm showing you just the basic VAT calculations, but if your lecturer has shown you a different formula, or maybe at school you were taught different formulas or different ways to go from an amount excluding VAT to an amount including VAT, and your formula is giving you the same answers as mine. So if you say 5,000 Rand excluding VAT and you apply your formula and you still get to 5,750, then my job today is not to confuse you or to bring in new formulas when you don't need it. Okay, so my demonstration today of the basic VAT calculations is maybe just for a student who haven't yet found their formula or haven't yet found their way, and for them they might find this useful. But please, if you have got something that works well for you, please, then I don't want to confuse you. Please continue with what you're doing if you are also getting 5,750. Please, as a rule of thumb, you have to remember that the amount excluding VAT must always be smaller than the amount including VAT. So if you make your calculation and now all of a sudden your amount including VAT now is much smaller than your amount excluding VAT, then that should be like a warning bell that goes off in your mind, and that must say, oh, hang on, maybe you didn't do your calculation quite correctly. So always remember the amount excluding VAT is always the smaller of the two amounts. So let's see if you can do this. Okay, so everyone now out with the calculators. And quickly, just there where you're sitting and watching the recording, quickly see, can you now work out if I'm giving you the amount of 897 rands, and that already includes VAT. Can you very, very quickly calculate what is the price excluding VAT? Okay, so I hope everyone's got their calculators out there on the desk. It can't just be myself and Salama who's doing all the work here today. So can you quickly do that calculation? If you're feeling very, very confident, you can put it up for us in the Q&As if you want to. Otherwise, you can just keep it there next to you on the desk, and then I'm going to show it in a minute. Okay, I think everyone must have had a chance now to work it out. So if we give you the amount,
sorry,
yes,
sorry.
We
have responses from our students. We've got Chloe with a 780, and yes, Isabella with a 780.
Okay, so let's see if I agree with that calculation. So if I'm giving you the amount including that, which I have done now, how will I get to the amount excluding that? I'm now going to divide by 1.15. Okay, so if you have the amount including that, then we divide by 1.15. So let's quickly see if that gives us the answer. And yes, spot on. So well done to the students who did post their answers and were able to get to the 780. Okay, I know many students also like to use this formula, the formula of what you want over what you have. And I think often at school, this is a favorite from the math teachers to show students this formula. So if this is something that will help you, you can also use the what you want over what you have. So what did we want in this particular question? We wanted the VAT exclusive price. And what did we give you? We gave you the VAT inclusive price. So if I take my VAT inclusive price, and it's up there now in the right-hand block of your screen, the 897, and I multiply it now with what I want. I wanted the price excluding VAT, the 100, and I divide it by what I have, the price including VAT, the 115. That is then another way in which you can get to the 780. So you can either use the what do you want over what do you have technique, or failing that, you can also just use the divide by 1.15 method. Either of these you can see gives us the 780. So either of those formulas will give you the correct answer. Now the next question is we know now what is the price excluding VAT, but now the next question that you might get asked is now what was the VAT included in the 897? Okay, so we can now take the question a bit further, and now we can say, okay, but hang on, what exactly was now the amount of VAT that was in that number? So here I'm also going to just show you a few different ways in which you can go about to calculate that. So if I was to take my VAT including amount and I subtract from it the VAT excluding amount, that will then give me the VAT. So if I take my original price of 897 rands, minus that 780 that we've just calculated, that will give me a VAT of 117 rands. And this is by far probably the easiest way, where you just subtract the amount including and excluding VAT. There is, again, we can use our formulas. So we can again go back to the what do I want over what do I have. So what do I want in this instance? In this instance, I want to know what is the VAT. What do I have? I have the amount including the VAT. So again, if you look up at the top right of your screen, the formula I can use is I can again use my 897, multiplying it with 15, divide by 115. So the what I want, divide by what I have, and once again, it gives me the 117. So I'm getting exactly the same answer than if I just subtracted the VAT exclusive amount from the VAT inclusive amount. So when you prepare for the test, you need to play around a little bit and see with which of these formulas are you the most comfortable. And of course, if your lecturer showed you any other formulas in class, then incorporate those also in your revision. So back to last year's semester test. So here now is our question number 5. And here they're actually asking the student to play around between those three numbers. So can they work out the VAT inclusive amount? Can the student work out the VAT exclusive amount? Or can they just work out the VAT amount? So in this little table then, the student was given different amounts and they had to find the gaps. And that brings us to exam or test tip number 3. Importance of always showing your workings. Remember, we did touch on it a little bit in Learning Unit 2, but here in Learning Unit 3, it's even more important because now you've got to be making all kinds of calculations. Also, again, remember, we're going to read our required carefully. And if you look there at that one top sentence, it tells you to round to 2 decimal places. So it gives you very specific instructions of how you have to round off all your answers. And it actually gives you what VAT rate to use. Okay, so make sure again that you are reading all your requireds very carefully, that you are picking up on all these little details. Accounting is a game of accuracy. So you do have to make sure that you are looking for all these little details that we bring into questions. So let's have a quick look then. How are we going to answer the question? So obviously the first one was the easiest one, where we gave the student the amount excluding VAT, and they now had to get to the VAT and to the VAT inclusive amount. So to get to the VAT amount, they would have just multiplied with the 15%, as you can see there up on my screen. And to get to the VAT inclusive amount, they could have gone and done it in a number of different ways. They could either just have added their VAT to their VAT exclusive amount, or they could have used one of our formulas by just multiplying with the 1.15%. So 1.15 rather. So there was different ways to go about it, but all of these still gave the student 9,315. Okay, so that is then this one where we say if we give you the VAT exclusive amount, there's different ways that you can, or different formulas that will give you the VAT inclusive amount. Then I'm just first going to jump to number 3 for the moment. So there we go. So in number 3, here we gave the student the VAT inclusive amount, and they had to work backwards. So here they had to find the VAT exclusive amount, or and also the VAT amount. So for ease, I started with first calculating the VAT exclusive amount. And there I used I've given you on the screen two possible formulas. So the top one is what you want over what you have. And the bottom one is where we just divide by the 1.15. And then to get the VAT amount, I'm either going to use the difference between the VAT inclusive and exclusive amounts, like we've done in the top row, or I'm going to again use the what I want over the what I have formula, and then I will use the 15 over 115. Please just make sure that you note something very carefully, and it's a pity actually I didn't highlight that on the slides. If we work with the VAT inclusive amount and I want to get the VAT amount, I use the 15 over 115. I hope you can all see that in the slide. But in the previous one, if I give you the VAT exclusive amount and I want to get the VAT amount, then I use the 15 over 100 in my formula. So please, this is very important that you need to see the difference. So if I'm given the VAT exclusive amount, then it's fairly easy. It's 15 over 100. If I'm given the VAT inclusive price, then it's 15 over 115. Then, so that is just this slide. Okay, and then numbers 2 and 4, in these ones, we gave the student the VAT amount, and they had to find the VAT exclusive and VAT inclusive amounts. So here we are going to divide the VAT amount by 0.15 or 15%. Or if you want to use the what I have over what I want formula, you can also use the 100 divided by 15. Those will give you the VAT exclusive prices, and then you are just going to add on your VAT to get to the VAT inclusive amount. There is a similar exercise to this in your textbook. That is question 3.6. Question 3.6 in your textbook is similar. So if you need a bit more practice in how do we jump around between those three numbers, then please complete question 3.6 of your textbook. There we go. So there's the full answer for question 5.1. That's the full answer. You're going to remember to show us workings. The question said round off to 2 decimal places, which is exactly what we did. And we used the 15% VAT rate. Unfortunately, I see we are now already running a little bit tight on time. Salama, anything you want to add or anything our students still want to know about their VAT calculations?
Hi, Ina. I had some questions regarding them showing their calculations on the answer books. I said yes, they must show as much of their calculations, and usually on the answer book there is a section always that we provide for them for their workings. And then the one question one student wanted to know, can she do them in pencil or pen? And I suggested pen. And then I also referred them to question 3.6 in their textbooks. Okay, again, what I would suggest here is I also prefer the shortcut methods. It's like I told the students on page, what you were just sharing them with them now in a is on page 93 in their textbooks. But if, like you say, we are not here to confuse them, and if they have a method that they have used from school, the given times what you want divided by what you have, and you still get to the same answer, then it's fine. But then then again also, because you are against time, I also just prefer the shortcuts, okay, which would be the times 1.15 or divided by 1.15. It's only really when you have to if you are given the VAT amount, that you have to use the what you want divided by what you have. But for going from exclusive to inclusive, it would be quicker to just say times 1.15, and then once you have this answer, to just subtract the inclusive from the exclusive. That's all for me, Ina. Thanks. I'll just see some students did post some new messages here. Um, for VAT, should we show the calculations on the table or just the amount? I think please try to, if you have the time, to show the workings and the amount. Okay. Especially,
And oh,
and
sorry, Salome, if I
yeah,
can just
ex
interrupt
yeah,
there. Obviously, if you can show your workings as close to the actual amount as you can, that helps your lecturer just to see where the workings are. But as Salama mentioned, often at the bottom of a table like this, we will have a specific working section where you can also do your workings. So you're welcome to do it on the table if there is enough space. In the working section or anywhere else on the page, but just make sure that your lecturer can see where you've done the workings. Because always just remember, we work against time when we mark, and we have many papers to mark. So always just think about it to make your paper as easy for the marker as you possibly can, so that we don't end up missing some of your calculations just because we couldn't see where you had done it. Sorry to have interrupted.
not a problem, Ina. Thank you. Um, I have a question from Docile, but I think she wants you to do gross margin calculations, but we are going to be getting to that now.
Yes, we are going to get to our gross margin and markup calculations in a minute. So these were then our VAT calculations. So please, students, as we said, this will impact you in learning units 4 and 5 and 6. So this is definitely one of your important building blocks to get you ready for semester test 2 and the exam. So please make sure that you're very comfortable with all these VAT calculations. Okay, let's okay, so just one final one, just to make sure we all now on the same page. So let's just quickly see if you can do this calculation. So I'm giving you the selling price, including VAT. I want to know the amount of VAT, and specifically, I want to know yes, so I want to know the amount of input VAT that's in this amount. So again, if you can all just very quickly use your calculators or your cell phones, whatever is the nearest to you, and just quickly work out that VAT number for us. Okay, just for the sake of time, so you would have used your 15 over 115 formula. I hope we didn't catch anyone out here. I hope nobody used the 15 over 100 formula, because remember, I am already giving you the selling price including VAT. So you have to use your 15 over 115 formula. And then remember, we can also test you on, do you understand if this amount is input or output VAT? So for the seller of this inventory item, the amount will be their output VAT, because that would be the VAT that they have charged on their sales. And for the business purchasing the inventory, the VAT amount will become their input VAT. So remember, the output VAT from the seller then automatically becomes the input VAT for the buyer. And there's a lovely question in the textbook, question 3.8. That is such a nice question, where it just reinforces again this concept of the output and the input VAT. So remember to also look at that. So here's just, so for VAT theory, you can look at questions 312 and 33. And then for the VAT calculations, look at questions 36 and 39. Now, the part I think many of you have been waiting for is we're going to look at our markups and our gross margin. And again, together with the VAT calculations, these calculations again are very important also for our learning units 4 and 5 and 6. So the first thing though that you just have to have 100% straight and clear in your mind is that a markup and a gross margin is not the same thing. Please, you have to be very sure that you understand there's two very different formulas to calculate a markup and to calculate a gross margin. And if you confuse these two in a question, it gives you two very different answers. So your markups, that is a percentage of your profit that you've made over the original cost price of the item, where your gross margin percentage is the profit over the selling price of the item. And if we look at it in numbers, if I am selling at 960 rands, an item with an original cost price of 540 rands, the markup percentage comes to 77.78% because I take the profit over the cost price, and the gross margin percentage is only 43.75%. So you can see it gives me two completely different answers, whether I'm working with a markup or with a gross margin. And so it's very, very important in the test that you use the correct formulas. Otherwise, it will impact the accuracy of your amounts. So just to make sure we all got it, yet another little banner comes up on the screen here: markup and gross margin, not the same. Okay, so that is a very key take home this afternoon or this morning from learning unit number 3. Okay, so let's see quickly if we can just demonstrate it one more time. Our selling price is 34,800. What will now be the cost price? If I use the markup of a 45% on cost, then the cost price of the item is 24,000. If I use a 45% gross margin, the cost price of the item changes and is now 19,140. So you can see that when we are given the selling price and we need to calculate the cost price, it gives us again two very different answers, whether the markup is on the cost price or is it a gross margin. As we said, for a markup then, we're talking about profit over cost price. And again, you can use your what we want over what we have formulas. So I gave you a selling price of 34,800 rands. I wanted you to work out the cost price. So I want you to work out the 100. I gave you the selling price, which is the cost plus the markup, which is then the 145. And so that gives me the cost price of 24,000. When the markup is on the cost price, the math is very similar to the math we use for our VAT calculations. So these formulas work the same as our VAT formula. That is, if the markup is on the cost price. I'll just pause that you can just have a quick look at this slide and just get your head around all my numbers that I've used in that top right-hand red block. The 34,800, that's the selling price, and the 24,000 is the cost price. Okay, Then if the question is working with gross margins, remember then we're talking about profit over selling price. And sometimes you will see the question paper might talk about a markup on selling price. So sometimes instead of saying gross margin, you may also find that the paper talks about, or the question talks about, a markup on selling price. So again, we can do our what you want over what you have. So this time the selling price is going to be the 100. The markup is still the 45%. And now our cost price is the selling price minus the markup. And that's how I get to my 55. So again, if you look up there in the top right-hand corner, if I take the selling price of 34,800 rands and I multiply it with what I want, what did I want? I wanted the cost price. What did I have? I have the selling price. And that then is how we calculate the cost price of 19,140 rands. Again, I'm just going to pause a little moment here just to give you a time to read through the slide and make sure you can see where I get all my amounts. Okay, so there's a similar question that deals with your markups. There's question 3.7. And just a reminder again, I know sometimes students forget about this, but remember at the back of your textbook in Annexure A, that is where you're going to find all the textbook solutions. So if your lecturer maybe didn't do question 3.7 with you in class, you can still, and you must still do it then at home. And then you can go and look in Annexure A of the textbook and quickly mark your answer against this question. So this brings us back now to that semester test from last year. So in the semester test, then they asked the student question 5.3 for 5 marks, where they had to play around a bit with the formulas. So they gave the student 2 sets of calculations, one dealing with gross margins and one dealing with markups. And the student had to play around by either getting the cost price or the selling price or the actual markup. And so let's have a quick look. And remember, again, we're using our tips. So tip 1 is you're not going to spend too much time here. You're going to work at your 1.2 minutes per mark. Step number 2 is you're going to look and read your required properly. So you're going to see for the one it's markups, for the other one it's gross margins. Tip number 3, you're going to be showing us those calculations for working out your selling prices and your cost prices. So the first table here, we told the student they're working with markups. Okay, so they're working with a markup on the cost price. And again, as a rule of thumb, remember, your cost price must always be smaller than your selling price. Because remember, we're going to add our profit to the cost price to get to the selling price. We're always going to try to sell for more than what we originally bought the item at. So just always keep these little things in the back of your mind when you do the calculations so you can check yourself. So we're going to use our formulas of what we want over what we have. So for that first one, we were given a 70% markup on cost price. We have to work out the profit and the selling price. So once again, you can use your what you want over what you have. So that one, this first one I've calculated, that is to get to the selling price. So what did I want? I want the selling price. What was I given? I was given the cost price, and that gives me the selling price. The next one, let's have a look there. So in this one, let's just go back up just to see. So in this one, I'm giving you the profit. So I'm already giving you the profit, and I want you now to work out the cost price and the selling price. So here I'm going to use a similar format or formula rather that I used earlier. Remember in the previous test paper question, we gave you the VAT amount and you had to work out VAT exclusive and VAT inclusive. Now this is a similar question. I'm giving you the markup. You need to get to cost price. You need to get to selling price. Don't be caught out here. We've got a huge markup percentage here. We've got an 800% markup. Don't let that 800% throw you out. We're still applying our same principles. So we're still going to say, what do I want and what do I have? What have I got? I've been given the profit and I want to figure out what was the original cost price. So in this instance, we have a very small cost price on this item because we're putting a huge markup onto this item. We're putting an 800% markup onto this item. So obviously a very clever business person, they know that they can buy in the item cheap, and then they can sell it at a huge markup. So they can make a big profit when they sell these items. So there's the full answer and with a variety of different formulas. So again, I would recommend you try this question first at home. And then you circle back to this slide of mine, and then you can just come and check your answers against the slide. And as you can see, I've given you different formulas that you can possibly use to get to those final answers. So you can come and double check your answers here. But the key was with this first table is the markup was on the cost price. Okay, that was your a very important thing that you had to note for the first set of calculations. Salama, anything from our students?
Hi, Ina. The one student just asked about how you got to the percentage for gross margin, but I did explain to her you took the 100 minus the 45, and that gave you the 55%. This one, yes. Okay, and yeah, and I think the other questions were, will they be tested on input and output VAT? And I think you did share that in the earlier slide also. And then I had a question about the source documents again, and the input and output VAT and the VAT return form. Should they know how to calculate whether VAT is payable and or refundable to SARS?
Yes, we certainly can test you on that. So we can give you a calculation where you have to work out the output VAT and the input VAT for the business. And then the next question will be, do we owe SARS money or will we get a refund? Remember again, if the output VAT is the bigger one of the two, then that means we have to make a payment to the receiver of revenue. They're going to be one of our current liabilities. And if the input VAT is the bigger of the two numbers, that means we can claim back money from the receiver of revenue, and then that input VAT will be your current asset. So yes, please, you do need to be able to work out, is it an amount payable to SARS or refundable? And again, have a look at that question 3.8. That is an exercise that you can do on that topic.
And then I've got a question. When you want to get selling price with VAT, do you work out selling price first and then do VAT?
Okay, so I think this student is now doing a combination question. I've got a little entry that I'll put up on the screen in a few minutes. So it is possible that we can start you off in the question by first giving you the cost price. Then we expect you to add onto the cost price the markup. and depending on the question, which formula. Then you will get your selling price first without VAT, and then the question might go even further to say, now work out the selling price including the VAT, and then you also now need to add VAT onto that selling price. So you will see in a minute, I've got a kind of a question where we combine everything into one. So that is certainly a possibility where we can combine your understanding of markups and gross margins with VAT, and we combine it all into one question. Okay, just for the sake of time, I'm just going to move on to that last part. So the last part of that question then, sorry, I think I've just skipped through it. Okay, so this one we have now done. So we've done the markup on the cost price. And then there was one last table that the student had to complete. And in this instance, we gave the student the gross margin. Okay, so, and remember we said from the start, a markup and a gross margin is not going to give you the same answers. So you certainly cannot be using your same formulas now for this answer. And we said earlier that for every question, you need to check, are they talking about markups or gross margin in the question. So I'm going to start with number 2 first. So in number 2, again, we gave the student already the profit or the markup, and they then had to work back to the cost prices and the selling prices. So again, we had to use that little formula about what we have over what we want. This one, the markup, or rather the gross margin, is 35%. So the selling price is 100%, because remember, a gross markup is a percentage on selling price. So it's the selling price is the 100. Then we have to work back to discover what will be the cost price. So the selling price is 100. The profit or the markup is 35%. So the original cost price then must be 65%. Because remember, your cost price plus your profit equals your selling price. So to get back to the cost price, then I'm going to say, what do I want over what do I have? I want the cost price, and that's the 65. What was I given? I was given the profit, the 35, and that then gives me the cost price. And then once I have the cost price, then it's fairly easy to get to the selling price. I just need to add the cost price and the markup together, and that will give me the selling price. So that is then when we work with a gross margin. Okay, so this exercise is specific to gross margins where you are given the profit. Again, I'm just going to pause on this slide just for a moment, just to give you time just to read through it and just to make sure you can understand where all the numbers are coming from. I know we're sitting at 12:05 and we advertised the session will end at 12. But if you can bear with myself and Salama, just say for another 10 minutes, then we will be able to wrap up the session. So if you haven't got another commitment, if you can stay with us just for the last few minutes. Okay. So just a reminder then again that what you want over what you have, a little formula is very useful, and it can be used for VAT calculations, it can be used for markup calculations, and for our gross margin calculations. The trick is just that you must just understand the relationships between the three numbers. So you must just understand the cost price, profit, and selling price, the relationship. Which one is 100? And then which one will be the markup or gross margin percentage? That's the given. And then how do you calculate either the selling or the cost price? Okay, in the next one, here we actually wanted the student to work out the gross margin percentage. And remember, a gross margin percentage is profit over selling price. We gave the student already the selling price, so that they had. The only thing they had to do for themselves was work out the profit. And it was a fairly easy calculation because we gave the students both the cost price and the selling price. So they just had to work out the difference between the two to get to the profit. And then once they had the profit number of 54,000, they then divided that by the selling price, 81,000. And of course, you multiply with 100% because we are looking for a percentage as your final answer. And that gave you the 66.67%. So in this question, you would have first had to work out the profit before you could have jumped in to work out the gross margin percentage. Again, please remember, you're going to show us your workings so that we can follow how you made your calculations. The question said up to 2 decimal points, so that's why we've got the 66.67 because we're following the instructions from the question. So that is just what the completed answer looks like then for that part 2 of question 5.3. Again, I would recommend that you go back at home now and in your own quiet space, try and redo all of these calculations and then come back to the slides and mark your answer against the slides. Remember, it is key that you must be practicing at home with these calculations. You can't just look at the slides and say, okay, that all looks cool. You actually need to be sitting at your desk and physically doing the exercises. Okay, so then I said lastly, and that was one of our students had a question earlier, what now if we make the question and we combine markups and VAT or gross margins and VAT all into one question? So let's see if you can do this question at home. So I'm giving you the selling price. And I'm giving you a selling price that already includes a markup of 25%, and it includes VAT of 15%. And I'm asking you now to go back and find the cost price. So I'm just going to pause, say, just for 10 seconds or so, and just quickly see, do you know what to do? Can you get back to the cost price? Okay, were you all able to try that on your device there? Let's quickly just see how you would go about this. So for this question, we had to remove the VAT and we had to remove this 25% markup to get to the cost price excluding any VAT. And for this one, I went with Salama's suggestion and I just did the kind of the quick formulas where I just divided with 1.15 and divided by 1.25. You could also have gone the route with the what you want over what you have formulas. That would have worked out perfectly. And also you could have divided first by 1.25 and then by 1.15. It wouldn't have made a difference in this instance. Either way, you would have got to the final answer. And again, just there for completeness, I'm just also adding in for who is it output VAT and for who will it be the input VAT. So I'm just kind of adding that in as a last reminder to this slide. So something like this, of course, the key is you're going to definitely show us workings because there's two distinct calculations that you have to make here. And you're going to have to break it up because you've got to do two things. You've got to remove the markup and you've got to remove the VAT. So you need to break it for us into those two things. So that was just a kind of a last difficult question, just to show you how we can combine everything, all these calculations, just into one. We have spoken about this before, but remember that question 3.8 in the textbook is really lovely, because that question combines markups and VAT, and the whole issue of input and output VAT, and gross profit and cost of sales. All of those terms and concepts are combined into one beautiful question. So just to wrap us up then for the day, remember my 4 tips when you walk into that exam venue. And I actually should have put here an overriding tip, is to just stay calm. Okay, so just make sure you are calm and relaxed. You don't want to be so anxious in the assessment that you make silly mistakes. So just make sure you're breathing and you are giving yourself the best chance you can. Because remember now, we are the Springbok rugby team. We're busy with preparation. We've been to the practice sessions. We did everything we can. Now it's that 80 minutes on the field. Now it is giving all you can in that 60 minutes that you have in the exam venue. So you're going to stay on time. You're not going to overspend so that you can't finish the paper. You're going to be making sure you read carefully what is being asked of you in the paper. You're going to show us all your workings, because remember, in accounting, we've got something we call a method mark, which means that even if you made a mistake earlier, but you're still using your numbers correctly, we still give you some of the marks. So, but for that to work, we must be able to see workings. Otherwise, we can't apply that method mark philosophy. And then in the question, you're going to see which inventory method is being used by the business, and are they using a markup or are they using a gross margin? So you please going to keep those 4 things in the back of your mind as you're writing your test. You're going to write dead click somewhere on your test paper in case we ask you about general ledger accounts. Then you've also got that ready. Okay, everyone has signed for our attendance. If you haven't signed attendance yet and you're able to just click on with your cell phone on this QR code, this is one last chance to do your attendance. While you are doing attendance, for those who haven't done it yet, Salama, is there any last minute things that you would like to share with us?
Just a reminder, students, just to, as in our mention, the important thing is just to remain calm and breathe in. We know that you are studying very hard and will be prepared for Friday's test. Again, just read the instructions, and especially with regard to the previous slide now, when we were busy with markup and gross margin calculations, always remember that for those calculations, we always work only with the exclusive VAT amounts, okay? And that is why the trick was in the question, they gave you the inclusive, but you must always remember that you need to get to the exclusive. Because if you go and look in your textbook on page 95, they will also remind you there that you only work with exclusive VAT amounts with your markups and your gross margin. Okay, but all the best, and for Friday's test, I know you're going to be doing well. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, this slide is actually not right. Thank you very much, Salama. Students, if you want to send Salama a quick thank you, I think she must be exhausted. She was answering all of your questions. Um, So please just if you can all just send her a quick thank you for all those answers that she was able to provide you with. And please remember, if you do have more questions, that's why your lecturers are there. So they will be, you can reach out to them as well and just ask them the last few questions if you still have anything that you are not so sure about. Let's see. So, yeah, so I think that was everything then from my side. Um, sorry, there was something else now. It's slipped my. Oh yes, as we said earlier, please. Yes, there will be a session just like this for test 2 and for the exam. But remember, these sessions do not take away your responsibility to go to class, to engage with the content. Because remember, we are in that team. We want to win this semester. We want to pass this semester. And that means we have to do the practice. So it means we do have to consistently go to class and work at home so that we are fit on the day when we write the test and we can do the best in those 60 minutes. So everything of the very, very best on the test date. Salama and I and all of your lecturers, we really just want the very, very best for you. So we trust that you are all going to do very well in this coming up assessment. And then, as we said, these are going to be shared with you on that YouTube site. So you can also recap if needs be. Thank you, everyone, and everything of the best.